माधव हरे माधवा
माधव हरे माधव हरे माधव हरे माधवा
माधव हरे माधव हरे माधव हरे माधवा
माधव हरे माधव हरे माधव हरे माधवा
ओम नमो नारायण ओम नमो नारायण
ओम नमो नारायण ओम नमो नारायण
गोविंद हरि गोविंद हरि गोविंद हरि गोविंद
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 ओम नमो नारायण ओम नमो नारायण
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 केशव हरि केशव हरि केशव हरि केशव
केशव हरि केशव हरि केशव हरि केशव
माधव हरि माधव हरि माधव हरि माधवा
माधव हरि माधव हरि माधव हरि माधव
गोविंद हरि गोविंद हरि गोविंद हरि गोविंद
गोविंद हरि गोविंद हरि गोविंद हरि गोविंद
ओम नमो नारायण ओम नमो नारायण
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 ओम नमो नारायण
ओम नमो नारायण
ओम नमो नारायण
ओम नमो नारायण
ओम नमो नारायण
ओम नमो नारायण
श्री कृष्णचंद्र भगवान की जय
जय
सद्गुरुनाथ महाराज की जय
जय
गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी
गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी
गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी
गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी
गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी
गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी
गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
श्याम सुंदर मदन मोहन वृंदावन बिहारी
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 वृंदावन बिहारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
वृंदावन बिहारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
वृंदावन बिहारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
वृंदावन बिहारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी
गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी
गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी
गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी
गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
श्याम सुंदर मदन मोहन वृंदावन बिहारी
श्याम सुंदर मदन
श्याम सुंदर मदन मोहन वृंदावन बिहारी वृंदावन बिहारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी वृंदावन बिहारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी गोविंद गिरिधारी गोविंद गिरिधारी ये वृंदावन बिहारी लाल की जय। श्री सद्गुरुनाथ महाराज की जय।
Hi everyone. Can you all hear me clearly? Cool. The whole winter I was in the outside. Now I have come into the library. We used to have the sunset. How are you all doing? Doing great? Awesome. Great. We have at least 3 of you who can answer. Please turn your video on. Hari, you can ping her to turn the video on. Today was quite a busy day. That our day started quite early. We had the in-person Balavihar starting. It started today, and it kept us busy till 2:30. Then all 3 of us had to go to a Arangetram. None of us were dancing, that much I can guarantee. I think amongst the 3 of us, me, Hari and Divya, Hari is a better dancer. I have not seen Divya dance ever. Hari I have seen. I am not a dancer, so let's leave it there. So after the Arangetram, we are now back into this satsang. So that was quite hectic. But hey, we are still breathing and smiling. So no complaints there. It was a fulfilling day. So we'll start with the opening prayers and then get down to today's questions. Is this some kind of a spring break for all of you? Because whenever there is a break, I find a break in the participants. So hopefully they are having a good vacation with their family and others. Okay, let's begin. Om Sahanavavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Gurureva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Are you all ready? No thumbs up this time? Okay. Let's have Hemant. Hari Om Hemant. How are you, man?
Okay, as always, our Swamiji Pirkar.
Na super arkeda. Always. Nice to see you. So, simple question or hard question?
Whichever.
Awesome. I like the confidence. So, let me ask you this question. How is our birth determined by the three gunas?
Okay, so the way I see it is past actions determine this current birth, where we are. Past vasanas, determine where we are. And actions and vasanas are basically representation, manifestation of the three gunas. So for instance, if we've lived a, very tamasic kind of, lifestyle in the past, those that karma is bound to catch up with us in some way or another by exposing us to what it means to lead a tamasic life. Actually, if we lead if we were predominantly rajasic in the past life, then that's also going to catch up in some way. And if we've lived a Satwik life, then that's going to bring about its own reward. So I guess to summarize, gunas, determine our actions, and those actions in turn will determine our lifetime, which in turn will influence the next lives should we not attain moksha in this one.
Now that you mention moksha, what do you mean by it?
Well, I mean freedom from the cycle of birth and of life and death, freedom from samsara.
How would you answer when somebody says, but I'm having fun in that which you want to escape from? Why should anybody escape from it?
Well, we may be having fun, but like anything, fun has a beginning, and anything that has a beginning has an end. It's not going to be permanent. So, and eventually the cycle will just repeat itself over again, where it'll go back to the beginning, and then there will be an end to it. So, and yeah, something is fun only as long as it lasts, but nothing is permanent. Everything that begins has an end.
So therefore, you're trying to say that moksha is something of permanency?
Yes.
Can you deliberate on that? Because you said it is a breakaway from the cycle of birth and death. So in that definition of moksha, I don't see anything of permanence. If I get rid of this birth and death cycle, maybe I cease to exist.
Well, moksha I don't think it's like that. Moksha is when you actually achieve a more permanent state, which, there is no concept of, not existing, because the only thing that happens during moksha is actually achieving that true existence, which is permeation of all. We can call it any name. We can call it Brahman. We can call it the Supreme. We can call it the One. But it doesn't mean not existing. It means reaching a permanent state of existence. And from that, there is no coming back to anything that's temporary or unreal.
Okay. Fair enough. Now it sounds very comprehensive. Thank you for that. Divya, do you want to add anything to it?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
For the most part, it was good. The only small tidbit I would add is that from the chart that Hariji had sent, there is a very specific line talking about those that are in the Satwik state reach the higher worlds, those that are in the Rajasic state stay in the middle, and those that are in Tamasic state reach the lower worlds. So here to clarify that meaning, the upper world is in lokas that are above the Manusha world, and lower forms can be forms of Naraka, but it can also take in the form of animals or rocks or insentient plant form. So lower life forms is if it's in Tamasic. Rajasic, it says middle, which means actually the human life again, because human life, as when it starts, is in pursuit of wants, desires, likes, and dislikes. So that's that's the trademark of Rajas. So from the chart, it says Sattva is higher, Rajas is middle, and Tamas is lower. So I just wanted to add clarity to that one.
One more sentence that I will add before I finish this question is laced with Rajas laced with Sattva, higher probability of human birth in a better format. Laced with Tamas, then it goes down into the lower forms of life, either in this world or the worlds below. Pure Tamas, definitely down below worlds. But Rajas laced with Tamas can be in this world, but the lower forms of expression in the 8.4 million kinds of formats in which a jiva can take form. Anyway, I'll stop here. Thank you both. Now let's have Siddharth.
Hare Om Swamiji.
Hari Om. Kushalam va?
Sarvam Kushlam. Bhavanapi Kushlai asti va?
Super Kushalam. Atyuttama.
Kushalottamam.
Atyuttama. Kushalam. So the question for you is, because a sattvic mind is a purified mind of agitations of rajas and cleansed of the indolences of tamas, it allows us to experience a greater share of inner peace and subtler understanding. This is taken paraphrased straight from the book. Is there a specific pattern that we ought to follow to train our mind to receive this subtler understanding?
So I think that as examples that are given in the book, in Bhagavad Gita and everywhere else, that it's going from the grosser to the subtler, from tamas to rajoguna to sattvaguna. It's like a krama. There is a sequence that needs to be gone. You can't just jump from one, or like say tamas to sattvaguna, right? So one thing that comes to mind for me is that when we wake up in the morning from sleep, right, we are coming out of the tamoguna, and we take snanam and first then do puja to get out of that, to get into action first puja, then japa, then dhyana, to get subtler and subtler. So to start from wherever we are and to build that up in that subtlety, so that we can go to the next step in that process as we go through. And then finally dhyana, which is the most subtle of like the upasanas that we have.
I'm glad you mentioned dhyana also as one of the doables. Okay, let's call in Hari Chaitanya and see if he has to add anything more to it.
Hari Om. Samyak asti. So when it comes to subtle understanding, subtle understanding is also a muscle to be flexed. It's not that vichara comes easily and it's something that on the spot I can demand myself to get into that realm where I understand things very clearly and I'm alert and I'm fully functional in that realm. It's where I constantly have to make sure, even physically, externally, things are conducive so that I can get to that state. And like Siddharth mentioned, the way Sanatana Dharma lays out the process to get to that point, it goes from that gross level to the more subtle level. Or if you look at the sadhana process that Siddharth laid out, it goes from the grossest of what I do to the subtle. And there's recently one of the YouTube short that I saw. It's by a channel called Festival of Bharat, where they post a lot of things about Sanatana Dharma, where they delineated the difference between Indian philosophy, not Eastern, Indian specifically versus Western philosophy, where it doesn't start at a subtle level like Western philosophy does and then percolate to what it is at the gross level. Starts with where I am, what I experience, and from there builds a philosophy going to the most subtle. So I think that's a very practical method, and that convinces us more of this entire framework of the three gunas and the patterns that arise from that.
Awesome. Siddharth, just off the cuff, I'm asking this. So you do not want to answer this, but do you know what is the first shloka of Vishnu Sahasranama?
Vishwam Vishnu Vashatkaro.
Awesome. Okay, Kartika, you can also jump in if you know the shloka. The excitement with which you raised your hand. Go ahead.
No, the reason why I got excited, Swamiji, is because there's another question asking about an example in our itihas, about developing, growing your mind. And the first example that came to me was Yudhishthira. And after the war, Kurukshetra war, he he was in that state that Arjuna was before the Bhagavad Gita, where he was completely broken, that all of these family members of his were killed. And at that point, how Bhishma Pitamaha helped him grow out of that state to one where he is now able to realize the greatness of Vishnu and Brahman. That transformation came to my mind. So I got excited with that.
So going back to the example, the title of the book says, or the title of the discourse between Maharaj Yudhishthira and Bhishma Pitamaha is that he's asking, or he's announced saying that I am going to say Vishnu Sahasranamavali, the 1,000 names of Bhagavan Vishnu. And if you look at it, what is the first name that it begins with? It doesn't incidentally begin with Vishnu. He is described from the grossest tangible element. The first description of Bhagavan, that Ishvara, is Vishwam. Vishwam meaning that which we are an integral part of, the creation. From Vishwam, the process is given step by step to find that which is the abode of abidance, which is Vishnu. Where is it? Again, Vishnu means that which is all pervading. Yat sarva vyapakam saha Vishnu. So that which is all pervasive, where in this very Vishwam. So there is this a very amazing master that I have had opportunity to sit down with and have conversations. I remember very clearly he used to say, God is very easy. And we would be baffled and we would be looking at him and like, no, what kind of a statement? We are like struggling hard here. What do you mean God is easy? He's not hiding. He's everywhere. You just have to open your eyes. What is difficult is to create that highest Satwik mode of a bhakta attitude. That is what is going to open your eyes. And there is no direct jump to being in that attitude. One has to grow from tamas to rajas, which is applying the Karma Yoga Siddhanta. And when you get subtler with that, you now dedicate it selflessly to a higher goal. When that higher goal tends to become the highest, then you are transcending into that Satwik Lakshana. And in that Satwik Lakshana, you become the Bhakta, where you can start now seeing everything that is around you is nothing but that Bhagavan alone. And from that Vishwam, you transcend to that which is intangible to the mind, which is that Satchidananda Vigraha. Thank you both. Awesome.
Swamiji, I have a follow-up question.
It was supposed to be my questions to you. You changed the format. Okay, go ahead. Ask.
So Hariji was talking about making sure that we have a conducive environment.
Okay, let's
to
stop
ourselves,
there.
right?
So Hariji was talking, so it is a question to Hari.
Okay. Okay. So Harigaru, you were talking about having a conducive environment, right? So at the one of the first shlokas in Viveka Chudamani, I don't remember which one exactly, but it talks about how time and place, while important, are secondary in nature to having to be an adhikari, right? So would you be able to talk a little bit more about how that ties in here?
So if we were to say that time and place is the be all end all, that without that proper time and place, there is no chance of me to have any kind of subtle thinking to go higher in the gunas to that Satwik state, that would be the erroneous statement there. But to an extent, until I'm equipped where despite the shenanigans going on around me, I can still retain that focus and have that control to get to Sattva, until that point, all of these physical things where everything is calm and quiet, that is a necessity. It's like having training wheels before I can get onto a two-wheel bike. And then whether it's traffic, whether it's raining, whatever, I can ride on those two wheels like a champion. Until that point, however, those training wheels are needed. And that's what setting our circumstances are. That's like our training wheels.
Thank you.
I'm glad it was an easy question and Hari could handle it. Thank you, Siddharth. Now let's come to the third question. Bring in Kartika. Baunara.
బాగున్నాను స్వామీజీ, మీరు ఎలాగున్నారు?
Nenu baunanamma. It's like I've never spoken to you in Telugu, so in my head it is that I always have Hindi, but this time I remember to talk to you in Telugu. So there is a question here. There seems to be a misconception that tamas is bad, sattva is good. While justifying that self-evaluation must be towards sattva. How do we clarify this misconception?
I think in nature, one thing that Swamiji mentioned was that it's not that sattva, rajas, and tamas are necessarily ranked in order like that. There are times when, tamas is needed, for example, sleep. There are times when rajas is needed, for example, when we go to work. And there's a lot of times that sattva should be embodied as well. I think it depends on how we channelize each and every guna, and depending on how we channelize, when we channelize, and how in control we are of when we channelize all three gunas, that determines, if something is good or bad. So tamas in itself is not necessarily bad as long as it's, in control and you know how much of that you're embodying and at what time. So I think in that sense, that clarifies that, tamas in itself is not necessarily bad. We need it as well to function. But too much tamas is also not good. And just knowing when we embody it and when we don't embody it is important.
You said too much of tamas is not good. Is too much of rajas good?
So although we live in a society where, rajas, I think, is seen as something that's profitable, and it's seen as something that is good. You know, you have the workaholic type person that's glorified, but I think too much of rajas is also not good, right? You have to have that sense of balance between sattva and rajas to be able to move yourself to that higher self.
So that begs to get to the next question: is too much of sattva good or too much of sattva bad?
It depends on what you wish to do in this lifetime, right? If someone like me, who has a career as a healthcare professional, if I decide one day that I'm not going to fulfill my duties as that particular person, and I'm going to, go into a meditative state per se, then, for what my duty is for society, that's not good. Then I should not be in this particular role. So too much sattva is also, depending on what your purpose is in this life, can be good or not good.
I have part A, part B next.
Okay.
This seems to be a good conversation. Part A. Can it be that, yes, if you are on an operation table and then you start meditating, not good?
Yeah.
Okay, understood. Can it be that you have enough balance, which is what we discussed earlier, that when I invoke what kind of guna to what field, right? So can it be that I have enough flexibility with my own gunas that I can choose to spend enough time in the meditative recluse, and then that portion where I have active engagement in any kind of activity that I'm responsible for, then I choose to express through sattva, rajas, and then once that is done, then I can go back and be in that sattva. Can that be done? Remember, this is only part A.
Yes. So yes, I think you can channelize. I think, you can perform your duties as whatever professional and be like, okay, be detached, be like, okay, in this particular time of the day or time of the week, I have to embody more rajas because I need to fulfill these particular responsibilities. But after that is done, then I can go back to sattva or other aspects of my life that may not require me to embody as much rajas. Yeah.
There's one more aspect there is, even while performing rajasic action, if that rajasic action is guided by a sattvic intellect which has clarity in what to do, how much to even engage into something and when to withdraw is a clarity. You shouldn't be told by somebody that enough now, please go. Which is what happens when we get too attached to our field of responsibility or field of influence, where people now are done with and they want you to, move on. So coming from that sattvic aspect, it is not like a chamber where I go in and I am sattva and I come into activity. Even that activity can be guided with sattvic vichara. Okay, action is happening at a physical level, maybe some emotion is also involved in it, but it is guided by this sattvic vichara. That is one aspect that I wanted to give. Now part B is, we have been hearing about the vasanas. The V here, which represents vasanas. The way we have been talking logically is, there comes a point in your life when the vasanas have depleted enough, where there is no more pressure of that vasana in that particular field anymore.
Hmm.
Just like when the leaf is done with the season, it falls. There's nobody who goes up there and plucks it. Similarly, that karma, that field will automatically wither away.
Hmm.
Until that pressure is there, it will be there. And once that pressure of that vasana is gone, you will automatically pave way for the next, whoever responsible, and do what is necessary is to withdraw from this very cycle of karma vasana to transcend it.
Hmm.
So all these different options have to be remembered when we discuss. It is not like a clear-cut chamber that this is sattva, this is rajas, and this is tamas. Even in that rajas, if it is tainted by tamas,
Hmm.
then haven't we seen people who do malpractices where I have heard horror stories where people have used that platform in the operation room, saying operation for one thing, but cutting a live organ from their part and in the black market. They're doctors.
Hmm.
And that is a tamasic mind which is laced into that rajas. So one has to understand it is not chambered, but it is a very fluid movement.
Mhm.
And where we are closer to, is this rajas closer to sattva or rajas closer to tamas? That is what I can choose to ordain.
Hmm.
Just wanted to make those clear cut. Okay, now that we have spoken, Divya, do you want anything to be chipped in into this? No? Okay. Thank you, Kartika. Now that we have another 30 minutes and a lot of questions, I thought I will choose asking the brahmacharis couple of questions. So let's see. Let's start with Divya. A very interesting question. What is the difference between Satwik Nyana and Tamasignyana? Is there an example with which you could explain this to us?
Sorry, I was pulling up my chart again. So, and I lost my place. Okay. So Satwik Jnana is to see the indestructible reality in all beings as undivided in the divided. Rajasic is to see all beings of various entities of different kind and different from one another. Tamasic is to cling to one single aspect as if it were the whole, without reason, without foundation in truth. And it's a very narrow perspective. So, okay, so now for the examples of each. When we talk about that sattvic understanding, we are able to, I guess I should reference the examples I was given earlier today, right? That we start with Vishwam, to see Bhagwan in everything as we're working in that variety. That highest sattvic perspective that guides our understanding and vision is having the sattvic knowledge in and through what I do. Whereas for a rajasic person, all we're able to see, like, we have a knack for seeing patterns of differences, understanding the mechanism. So we're in the thick of all the differences that occur within the world as we're functioning. And whereas a tamasic person, without clarity, without a check of valid pramanas, like our shastras or from a guru or from correct understanding, decisions are made on this is how things are, this is, you know, how I label things, this is how I box things, and this is the way the world is. So without knowledge, without correct analysis through our tamas, we decide our world looks like this, and this is my knowledge of the world. So I hope that answered the question.
Anything more practical, tangible examples?
Yes, when we examine ourselves, when we interact with our experience and say, when I'm trying to decide what are my actions, how do I analyze the experience I'm having, taking a step back in our reflective aspect and seeing, am I coming from that tamasic point of view where I immediately judge and decide things without verifications of pramanas? Am I just in the nitty gritties of what patterns are like? Is that where my mind is constantly going? Or am I seeking to apply that which I've learned from the Shastras in what I'm doing? So having a personal recheck, am I analyzing things with the right approach? That constant analysis, so it's like an analysis of my analysis. Am I doing that? And understanding from what mode am I gaining knowledge and understanding the world around me?
In the 14th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, there is a specific shloka, 17th one. So in that particular shloka, it says very beautifully, Satvat sanjayate jnanam rajaso lobha evacha pramada mohau tamasaha bhavataha ajnanam evacha. And whenever I read this, it is like so delicately Bhagavan puts how dumb Arjuna is. I'll come to that. This is Satvat Sanjayate Jnanam. It is in the Satwik mind that we have the opportunity for higher knowledge, clearer knowledge, and the knowledge of the Supreme is possible only there. That is the Satwik Jnana. Rajasic Jnana is where Lobha, it is filled with selfishness. That I may have knowledge, but I'm just giving a very practical thing. But I'm not ready to share it. Why? If I share this knowledge and skill set which I have, I might lose my very position in this role. Somebody else might snatch my position. So I will not share my knowledge. Now, coming to the Tamasignyana, Pramada Mohau Tamasaha. How is that tamasic knowledge? It is filled with erroneous perceptions and delusional mohau. And then, what is the role of Bhagavan Sri Krishna when he was delivering this Bhagavad Gita? He was a charioteer, Partha Sarathi. He was the Sarathi of Partha. So he has one hand the yoke of the horses, the other hand he has a whip. So he is turning around and using that whip on Arjuna very delicately. He says, Bhavataha Ajnanam Evacha. You are this lackluster, sudden forgetfulness of your own responsibilities. Hey Arjuna, Aapka bhi Bhavataha. Very respectfully, but still taking a good shot at him, giving a good whip at him, saying, Aapka bhi, thou art also very dumb, you see. Because that very confusion is the expression of tamas. Whenever I am in any kind of work, when I get confused, कि करना क्या है, नहीं करना क्या है. There is a song, right? क्या करे कि ना करे, कैसे मुश्किल हाय. I don't know, and I can't sing. I have to take again Hari's help. You don't know the song? Okay. Even confusion like मैं ऐसा क्यों हूं, मैं वैसा क्यों हूं. Every crossroad, if I get confused, that is the expression of tamas, tamasic knowledge. A very confused set of parameters. Or wherever there is confusion, understand that mind is in tamas. Wherever there is selfishness, that kind of jnana is in rajasic mode. And wherever it is leading us towards oneness, unity, and clarity, that kind of a position is called Satwik Jnana. The very shloka, as it explains the three phases, worth mentioning. 14th chapter, 17th shloka of Bhagavad Gita. Thank you. Now let us see Harigaru. Ready?
Yes.
Okay. Many say that Hindu Varna system is racial and oppressive. How would you respond to such narratives, having learnt about the roles or the expression of three gunas? There is the whole guna explained by Bhagwan. So how would you stand up?
So
Would you stand up? And if so, how would you stand up?
right. So if I may give context historically and then going to the Guna's explanation, the knock that Hinduism has this caste system is what they call it, saying that it's oppressive and racial, that stems from a false theory claiming that Hinduism is from outside India. And the effect of that claim is that there's an Indo-European race that went into India. They created this caste system to subjugate those existing people who are the Dravidians, is what they call it. The Aryans subjugating the Dravidians. And in order to subjugate them further, they had to create a system to make this go all the way and very airtight. That's how Hinduism arose from this very system. That's the contention that's there. So based on that, they say Hinduism is oppressive. This entire theory is false. There are no two races. There is no indigenous race that was enslaved by an outside race. That's not true at all. That's been systematically disproven for decades now.
If at all anything, it is the British race that came in and created this confusion. So it should be blamed upon them, which is what probably you're trying to focus on. Yeah, go ahead.
So given that historical context, we're still left with the vestige, that bad taste in our mouths, that many Hindus even believe this is an oppressive system. Now, if we look at 4th chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Guna Karma Vibhagashaha, that what someone's varna is based on what the preponderance of the guna is, and based on that, the vocation comes out. But that's not the end of the story. Because if that were purely the case, and that only existed based on what the gunas are, how would birth be determined? Varna would have to have some kind of connection to birth, wouldn't it? And we see a connection in Bhagavad Gita as well, where if we look at the 17th chapter, we find that for those who are predominantly tamasic, they find a place in the wombs of the senseless later on. For those who are predominantly rajasic, then they find their place in those who are greedy, frenetic with activity. They find a place in those kinds of situations. Therefore, being born in a certain kind of community, being born in a certain situation with a certain set of parents, none of that's accidental. The karma siddhanta that's laid out so clearly shows us, beyond a doubt, nothing is a coincidence, nothing is accidental. Being born in that situation, given the opportunity for that specific guna to really come out more, connecting to the swadharma, connecting the situation in general, what's there, that has to do with the preponderance of the gunas in connection with what the varna is as well. So we've done away with the fact that it's not a racial oppressive system, but birth does have a place in this whole system of how it affects the gunas, and in turn, what varna is designated because of them.
Just to add on to that, there was a Portuguese proselytizing, I don't know what to call them, father, Francis Abe. He had thoroughly studied the Varna system, and he matched it with the very system that was there in Portugal, Spain, and other places. And he equated it and said, if we can bring a system where, and he designed the whole system, bring a system where the Varna system can be used to be translated as caste system, and then we tweak, this is called social engineering, we tweak the population into believing that there is that kind of a system, meaning prior to that there was Varna system, there was Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, but the oppressive nature of it was absent, which was introduced and designed during the British time, because they were not able to whip across the entire Bharatvarsha. They were not able to break it apart. So the best way to do was to break it subtly through this Varna system. So that was the historic reference that Hari was talking about. There is a book that I would want you all to read. It's written by Nicholas B. Dirk, and he has written Castes of Mind. And there is also another book, Colonialism and the Making of Modern India, by the same author. Worthy book to read if you have time on hand, to see how the social engineering was done very much by the British. That is captured. And what amazed me was, this is not an Indian who is trying to come to rescue and talk. It is the first time I'm seeing an author or a researcher, and his first research comes across in early 90s. And the book, I think, was published in early 2000, but it is a well-researched book. So please give it a good thorough read. Okay, I'll stop here. And we have reached to about 7:46. So we have about another 15 minutes. So, Hari, can I ask you another question?
Of course.
Okay. A very practical question this is. Evolution from tamas requires time and patience. Okay, it's a given. It's not that easy to unplug oneself from tamasic nature. How much time do you think I should give to myself to successfully grow out of my shortcomings before I change my approach?
The most frustrating quote to hear sometimes is, patience is a virtue. Especially when we're impatient, we hate to hear that. But it's true.
Oh God, give me patience, but damn it, give it right now.
Yeah. And the truth is, for anything that's worth cultivating, patience is needed. Which is why when we see advertisements or propaganda for things that happen quickly, learn Sanskritam in 30 days, 6-pack abs in 30 days. These are goals that people have. And then when you put a time limit on there and say, we guarantee it, it's a sham at that point. Come on, no matter how much self-effort you put in, 30 days to master something like that or to acquire something aesthetic like that is not possible, not the case. But then how much rope do I give myself before saying that I need to change my approach? Reflection is where this comes in. Say that you're a public speaker. And in my initial days of studying public speaking back in high school, we think after a few weeks of just taking these classes, we'll be able to give speeches anywhere without any kind of hesitation. But if you look at it, everyone has a different kind of growth that they go through. For some people, it's a year after studying public speaking, they're able to give a 5-minute talk somewhere, staying on a topic, staying to the time limit, connecting with the audience. That's one person's form of growth where they can competently do that. For someone,
if I may add, without any ums and ahs and cliches and...
Exactly, without any of that. And that's an accomplishment for them. For some people, 1 year of studying public speaking, for them, growth is what? Being able to look at an audience member in the eye, not have their legs shaking out of fear, and speak for 2 minutes without the and everything like that. Now you could look at these two people and say one is a much better speaker than the other. look at where they started from each other. That's a growth process that is tremendous growth for each person in their own way. So to have a benchmark that's a standard benchmark, not one that's customized for myself, and to say that my approach isn't working because I'm not growing according to that benchmark, that doesn't work. And for that, an insecurity has to go away, that I'm always constantly being judged, that I'm always being looked at. For instance, Swamiji, in jest, I'm hoping, made the compliment at the beginning that Hari's a good dancer. That instantly made me start sweating. Why? Because when a claim like that is made, people want proof. And now that terrifies me that people will ask for that proof. So like that, when insecurities abound, whenever the most benign statement is made, that's because in my process of growth, these insecurities always come up, and therefore I'm always under stress. But understanding that a process takes time, understanding results don't happen overnight, I don't just throw the baby out with the bathwater, meaning tweaking my process doesn't mean I throw everything away. I still stay steadfast to what has been prescribed for my own personal growth.
Though that example was in jest, but I do have at least a couple of videos of you dancing.
Blackmail, Swamiji, that's blackmail.
No, I'm just saying you don't need to be under any pressure.
Okay.
I'm still working for you. It is not a same-side goal. I'm saying I have those videos and I can say, see, these are the videos and I have a proof for it. So you can relax. Nobody is going to ask you to dance. I'm watching for you, man. Now he is like completely there. Are you working as a team, or are you putting me in that ditch? Hey, the answer was good, that you cannot make that kind of a permanent benchmark and create insecurities, but you need to have a moving goalpost, sort of, wherein you are trying to have that which is workable, reach there, and from there you take another goalpost and then create. But the vision is not forgotten. Several such goalposts are the ones that support you reaching to that conclusion of that vision. That's a good way to approach, and that's a healthy way to approach. Good answer. Thank you, Hari. Now I would request our singing champion. Today I think I would request Hemant. In a good tune that you can please let us invoke Hanumanji's blessing through Hanuman Chalisa, please.
Yes. Shri Guru Jarana Sarojara Jai Nijamana Mukura Sudhari Parano Raghuvar Bhimalaisha Jodhaya Kafalachari Buddhihina Tanujanike Sumiro Pavana Kumar Balabudhi Vidya Dehu Mohi Harahu Kalesa Vikar Jai Hanuman Jnana Guna Sagar Jai Kapishati Huloka Ujagar Ramaduta Tulita Baladhama Anjani Putra Pavana Sudanama Mahavira Vikrama Bajarangi Kumati Nivara Sumati Kesangi Kanchana Varana Viraja Suvesa Kanana Kundala Kumchida Kesa Hatu Bajra Dvaja Viraje Kandhe Munja Jineyu Saje Shankara Suvana Kesari Nandana Teja Pratapa Mahajagavandan Vidyavana Guniyati Chatur Rama Kaja Karibeko Atur Prabhu Charitra Sunibeko Rasiya Rama Lakhan Sita Manabasiya Sukshma Rupadari Siya Hidikava Bikada Rupadari Lanka Jarava Bhima Rupadari Hasura Samare Ramachandra Ke Kaj Savare Laya Sajivana Lakhana Jiyai Shri Raghuvira Hara Shivra Lai Raghupati Kini Bahuta Badai Tuma Mama Priya Bharatai Samabhai Sarasa Badana Tuma Rojas Gave Asakai Shripati Kandha Lagave Sanakadika Brahmadi Munisa Narada Sarada Saida Hisa Yamakubera Dikapala Jahate Kaviko Vidakai Sakai Kahate Tumupakara Sugriva Hikina Rama Milaya Rajapadadina तुम्हारो मंत्र विभीषण माना लंकेश्वर भय सब जग जाना युग सहस्र जो जन पर भानु लील्योता ही मधुर फल जानु प्रभु मुद्रिका मेलि मुख माही जल दिलांगी गए अचरज नाही दुर्गम काज जगद के जेते सुगम अनुग्रह तुमरे तेते राम दुआरे तुम रखवारे होतन आज्ञा बिनु पैसारे सब सुख लहे तुम्हारी शरणा तुम रक्षक काहू को डरना आपन तेज सवारो आपे तीनों लोक हाकते कापे भूत पिशाच निकट नहीं आवे महावीर जब नाम सुनावे नासे रोग हरे सब पीरा जपत निरंतर हनुमत पीरा संकट से हनुमान छुड़ावे मन क्रम बचन ध्यान जो लावे सब पर राम तपस्वी राजा तिनके काज सकल तुम साजा और मनोरथ जो कोई लावे सोई अमित जीवन फल पावे चारों युग परताप तुम्हारा है प्रसिद्ध जगत उजियारा साधु संत के तुम रखवारे हसुर निकंदन राम दुलारे अष्ट सिद्धि नव निधि के दाता हसवर दीन जानकी माता राम रसायन तुमरे पासा सदा रहो रघुपति के दासा तुमरे भजन राम को भावे जन्म जन्म के दुख बिसरावे अंत काल रघुवरपुर जाई जहाँ जन्म हरि भक्त कहाई और देवता चित्तन धरई हनुमत से ही सर्व सुख करई संकट कटे मिठे सब पीरा जो सुमिरै हनुमत बलवीरा जय 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 हनुमान गोसाई कृपा करो गुरुदेव की नाई जो शत बार पाठ कर कोई छूट ही बंति महासुख होई जो यह पढ़े हनुमान चालीसा होई सिद्धि साखी गौरीसा तुलसीदास सदा हरि चेरा की जय नाथ हृदय महडेरा की जय नाथ हृदय महडेरा पवन तनय संकट हरण मंगल मूर्ति रूप राम लखन सीता सहित हृदय बसो सुरभूप सियावर रामचंद्र की जय पवन सुत हनुमान की जय उमापति महादेव की जय बोलो भाई सब संतन की जय
Sadgurunath Maharaj ki jai. Thank you, Hemant. Hari.
ॐ त्र्यम्बकं यजामहे सुगन्धिं पुष्टिवर्धनम् उर्वारुकमिव बन्धनान् मृत्योर्मुक्षीयमामृतात् ॐ त्र्यम्बकं यजामहे सुगन्धिं पुष्टिवर्धनम् उर्वारुकमिव बन्धनान् मृत्योर्मुक्षीयमामृतात् ॐ त्र्यम्बकं यजामहे सुगन्धिं पुष्टिवर्धनम् उर्वारुकमिव बन्धनान् मृत्योर्मुक्षीयमामृतात्.
Thank you, Hari. We will go into the final conclusion. Veda, you were not asked any questions because you just came in new to the topic. So, but next topic you will be into it by the third week. You are also up for any questions. So, you will be asked. You can also ask questions prior week to that. So, that you can be participative. So, let us conclude. ॐ सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतङ्गमय ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ. Take care everyone. See you next week around the next topic. Hari Om.